when I was in middle school, me and my best friend ended up having a crush on the same girl, right? And that's a tough scenario. Am I right? Like that's a really, really, really tough scenario. And then all of a sudden, the good news, I thought, was that she liked me and not him, right? And I thought that this could be okay. I thought that we could be gentlemen, shake each other's hands, call it like it was, and he and I could still be best friends, and I get the girl, and that is not what happened. In fact, what happened was all of our friendship just kicked to the curb, right? He was like, all right, you know what? You suck, Josh, and I'm done. And threw me aside. Well, fast forward, pre-cell phones, me and this girl did not keep in contact over the summer. And so we kind of drifted apart early in our freshman year of high school. I hadn't talked to either of them in a long time. And the first time I got a phone call from my old best friend, he calls me and he says, guess what? And I'm like, what? He said, I'm dating her now. And I was like, cool, man, cool. And you know what? The story doesn't end there, but we'll come back to it. I want to tell you about another story that comes out of Genesis 33. It's from some people that maybe if you've grown up in church, you've heard about before. Two twin brothers named Jacob and Esau. Have you heard of that? And Jacob and Esau, they're twins, and like every good pair of siblings, they fight. In fact, they have some of the most famous fights in the Bible. There's one point when Esau is literally about to die. He's starving, and he finds Jacob. He's out in like the desert. They're in the middle of nowhere. He finds his brother, and he's like, oh my gosh, finally, you're here. Give me some food because I'm dying. And Jacob goes, you know what? I'll give you some food if when dad dies, you give me your part of his inheritance. How's that? And Esau goes, okay, I guess, because if I don't eat this, I will die. So he trades that. All right, how many of you recognize Jacob's kind of the dirtbag in that scenario, right? Like, I mean, that's like not sharing to the 5,000th degree, right? That is as mean as it gets. And then later in life, their dad is trying to do a very special blessing, but their dad is so old, he's gone blind. And so he calls Esau in and says, hey, Esau, I want to bless you. Go get some supplies. While Esau is getting supplies, Jacob comes in, pretends to be his brother, like changes his voice, puts on a costume, puts on different cologne, like the whole deal. And comes in, pretends to be Esau, tricks his dad, and steals his brother's blessing. And then he knows that he's got Esau so mad, so he runs away, and he leaves his brother for 14 plus years. Yeah, like that's your entire life. Okay, all right, so plus some. And so they've been gone. They haven't talked to each other. Can you imagine how angry Esau should be at this moment? He's got his brother, his little punk brother, who stole everything and ran away. And this is what happens in Genesis 33. Jacob is traveling, and he's actually traveling through Esau's homeland. Like he's trespassing on Esau's stuff. And imagine how much Esau has to be angry. And Jacob knows he's going to be angry. So Jacob is scared. So he tries to suck up. This is what he does. Genesis 33, here's what it says. Jacob looked up and he saw Esau coming with his 400 men. Okay, that's a scary sight, right? Like if it's one thing if you have like your older brother and a couple of his older friends are coming to beat you up. But when it's Esau and his 400 soldiers are coming at you, it's pretty scary. It says they're coming towards him, so Jacob takes his kids and he sends his wife Leah, his wife Rachel, his 2 servant wives. He had 4 wives. Jacob was crazy. He put the servant wives and their children at the front, Leah and her children next, Rachel and Joseph last. He's like, all right, maybe they'll take mercy. They'll see my kids and my family, and they'll be like, hey, I'm not going to hurt this guy. He sends all the girls and the kids first. Isn't that messed up? Girls, isn't that messed up? Right, yeah, that's jacked up. And then Jacob, like the coward, comes last. And then it says this, so he goes ahead, he approaches his brother, he falls to the ground, he bows 7 times. This is what Esau does. He runs to meet him. He embraces him. He throws his arms around his neck. He kisses his brother, and then they both cry. Do you know what happened? At some point over those 14 years, instead of Esau getting bitter and more bitter and more bitter and more bitter and coming ready to kick his little brother's butt, he shows up and he hugs him and he cries over him and he forgives him. It's amazing to me at this moment that we see that Esau has forgiven his brother Jacob, and I think at this moment we recognize that Jacob didn't deserve this, and Esau is being so kind to him. So here's what happens. What happens is that after this, Esau says, I've forgiven you, and I want you to come back and live with me. In fact, I'm going to make space for you. I want you to come back and live with me. You might not know this part of the Jacob and Esau story. Because then Jacob says, of course, I'd love to come with you. I'll meet you at home. You go ahead, get everything set up for me, and I'll be there really soon. And it says Esau leaves, and Jacob lied, and he turns and he runs away again. Wait. He had already been forgiven. He had already gotten on good terms. Esau had done a really kind, incredible, merciful, graceful thing. And what happens next is, even though Esau did the right thing, sometimes people will still do the wrong thing back to you. And the question that we have to ask is, what are we going to do when we do the right thing to people and they do the wrong thing back? What happens next? So we're going to talk about this a little more, but let's head to our tag groups, talk through a couple of questions, and then we'll be back. My friend and I and the girl, the love triangle, I'm sure you're curious. We all went to different high schools, and so the 2 of them broke up, but guess what? All 3 of us ended up at the same university. We all went to college together, and that doesn't super matter because me and my friend, when we got to college together, we ended up having classes, and him and I became close friends again. And so we ended up hanging out, and there was another girl who he had a crush on, and unfortunately, she became really close friends with me, and at one point had asked me, "Hey, do you think I should date him?" And at that point, he was not walking with Jesus, and I said, "I don't think you should." And he was so angry at me that, again, he cut off our friendship. And it ended up being completely worse one day, years later. Now, I tried to rebuild. Rihanna is my witness. I tried to rebuild friendship with him. And a couple years later, his mom was throwing a surprise for him and invited Rihanna and I, and we showed up, and I was so excited to see him, and he was so furious that I was there. It was probably the most awkward dinner I've ever had in my life. It was absolutely painful. And it was this moment where man, I felt like I had poured out time and time again, and man, it just wasn't met back to me. What are we supposed to do in those moments? I think we have a really good example in Luke chapter 6. And here's what it says. Verse 32, if you love those who only love you, why should you get credit for that? Even sinners love those who love them. If you do good only to those who do good to you, why should you get credit? Even sinners do that. If you lend money only to those who can repay you, why should you get credit? Even sinners will lend to other sinners for a full return. Real quick. Here's what Jesus is saying in that verse. Think about the worst person that you can think of. Think about the worst person. Don't say their name, and especially if it's your sibling. Don't say it. Think about the worst person that you know. Here's what it says. If someone loves them and they do kind things to them, the worst person in the world will probably still do kind things back. They're not stupid. If they are stupid and evil, they might. But most people, even bad people, they're nice to the people who are nice to them. Most people who are bad people, they love the people who love them. Now, if you stop loving them, they'll probably stop loving you too. But what Jesus is saying is that's not really special. It's not really special. Even mean people love people who love them. So this is what Jesus tells us to do that's even more special. Verse 35, love your enemies. Do good to them. Lend to them without expecting to be repaid. Then your reward from heaven will be very great, and you'll truly be acting as children of the Most High. For he is kind to those who are unthankful and wicked. You must be compassionate, just as your Father is compassionate. Jesus says when people are cruel and mean and unkind, you respond with love. When people, when you don't expect them to give back to you, you still give to them. You know, there was thinking about other game shows, right? I've not seen it, but I heard about this game show, Squid Games: The Challenge, where they took the Squid Games and they made them in a real life challenge. And there was, and essentially the whole time people are like competing against each other, and it's going down to just a few people. And in one of the episodes, there, near the finale, there were only a handful of contestants left. And they had a choice. They were at a dinner together. They had to grab these coins and hold on to them. And you had a choice. Essentially what you were trying to do was deceive the people to grabbing the wrong coin. Because if they grabbed the wrong coin, you could save your own life and they could be eliminated. And so one guy who happened to be a Christian grabs his coins and he goes to the other guy and he begins to face him. And he tells the guy's trying to get in his head. He's trying to play a mind game. And he tells him, hey, I want you to win. I'm going to tell you exactly which coin to pick. And I want you to trust me. And he says, there's no way, man. There's no way. He said, no, I'm telling you right now. I want you to win. He said, pick this one. And the guy does. And he was telling the truth. And then he takes his coin and he walks up and he begins to pray, Jesus, you've got me. Jesus, you've got me. And he turns to the group and he says, hey, I want to eliminate myself so that you guys can win. And there's nothing in this left for me, but I want you guys to have it. And you know what's incredible about that moment is he makes a sacrifice. Nobody's doing anything kind back to him. He just says, hey, in fact, there's no way that they can repay him, right? He's losing out on a ton of money. And he goes, hey, I want to be kind. I want to love you in a way. This is what Jesus says is our response when people try to hurt us. And you know what's beautiful about that is when we do it in our own way, like if you try to get back at people, which is what we want to do, or if you just try to hold on to anger, you just try to hold on to that resentment, you do it your own way. That's your way. That's not Jesus' way. If you do it your own way, you'll actually end up hurting yourself more. You ever heard the expression like holding on to unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting somebody else to get hurt? But that is what it is. That's not Jesus' way, because if you do it Jesus' way, guess what happens? God can begin to heal the hurt that you have. If you trust in Jesus' way, God will help heal the thing that you have. He can help heal the hurt in your life. That's what happens for Esau. Over that 14 plus years, he ends up being healed. And he's able to forgive his brother. In fact, the Bible tells us even after Jacob betrays him again and lies to him and runs away, the Bible says that they end up seeing each other again when their dad dies. And they both come and they both bury him together. And there's not a war that breaks out. Why? Because Esau has been healed. And the other piece is this, is that if you do it God's way, God can use you to help others. And there's a blessing on that. One of the following chapters is an entire chapter telling us about the ways that God blessed Esau. And it just goes, here's how God blessed him. Here are the things that God did in his life. Here are the ways that he prospered. And here are the things that ended up happening to him. Why? Because God saw and helped heal him. And you know what? It began a change in Jacob too. And so when we have people who you've done the right things to and they have not done the right things back to you, the answer isn't to change your strategy. The answer isn't to go, oh, fine. Is that how you want to play? The answer is to continue to do what Jesus has called us to do. Love your enemies. Pray for those who hurt you. Can I be honest? That is really hard, but it's really good. It's really hard, but that is really the best. It's really hard, but that's what it looks like to win. And so here's what we're going to do. In a moment, we're going to have another song of worship. And leaders, I'd love to make you available. And so I'm going to have our leaders spread out, and they're going to be available if you need to pray for someone or something in your life. But particularly like, hey, if you've been hurt by somebody, I know I preached a really cool message today. But I also really know that that's probably not enough for you to leave and go, yeah, I just love everybody who's hated me. Right? Like, I mean, if you did that, please tell me. That'd be such a victory. But I think more often, if you have somebody who's done that to you, you're sitting in your chair going, I don't know if I believe that. And honestly, that sounds really hard. And I don't know how I would actually do that. And I think all of us, if you're really going to do that, if you're really going to try to treat people the way that Jesus treats us, I think if you're going to do that, you're going to need God's help.